Hi everyone, hope you're well. Chris Cowlin here. Now, before we get into it, I'd just like to inform you about a new website selling quality current and retro Spurs jerseys, okjersey.com. They sell all current and retro Tottenham Hotspur shirts in all sizes. They sell the current fan and player versions, as well as the 80s and 90s retro shirts, including my very favourite, the 1991 FA Cup final shirt. You can order very easily from okjersey.com, and if you use the code Chris, you will receive an 8% discount off your final order. You can also use the QR code on the top left of your screen. And by the way, they also have some training wear here and the 25-26 colour special edition jersey. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is well. My name is Chris Cowlin, and this evening I'll be joined by sports journalist Josh Hughes to talk about all of the latest Spurs news, rumours and reports. This is the Daily Tottenham Transfer News Show. It is day 22 of the January transfer window. We have our second signing through the door. We'll talk about him in a minute. 11 days to go. It closes on the 2nd of Feb. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook and X, please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling right now as a Spurs fan. Josh, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Good that we are finally seeing the confirmed news. Souza is now a Spurs player, and boy, does it look good in a Spurs shirt. I was saying just before we went live, I don't want to get carried away, but you sometimes look at a player and you think, oh, they're going to be good. And he's got the doggies old shirt, that 38, finally confirmed, really, really highly rated in Brazil. So good to see the left back in the door. We still need some more. There's been some exciting news coming from elsewhere today, and we're going to get right into it, I'm sure. But hopefully now, as we're getting closer to that deadline, it's going to be very, very busy at Spurs indeed, especially with the news of Lucas Bergval's injury now completely confirmed. And Thomas Frank's presser, another interesting watch, shall we say.
Indeed. Right, let's get into it, Josh. Souza has been officially confirmed by Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. He will be wearing the number 38 shirt. He said it is an incredible feeling, a unique feeling to join Spurs. It is a childhood dream. It's a really big club, a unique club. It is a big challenge to play in the Premier League. Like all Brazilian fans, I follow the Premier League. I've watched it since I was little. Like I said, it's a dream to be playing in the Premier League. It's a different style of football. It's a different style from the Brazilian style. There's more possession of the ball. It's completely different technically. It's going to be a real challenge for me. I'm really looking forward to life here. I want to discover new things, a new country. I'm really looking forward to everything. I can't wait to start playing. Asked about his immediate targets, he said, my first aim is to start playing and perform well in matches to help this team win. And Thomas Frank, on the signing of Souza, he said, I'm really pleased to add him to the squad. He is really talented, a promising young fullback who is forward-thinking and technically very good. I'm looking forward to working with him and helping develop that potential, as we believe we have brought in one of the brightest left-back talents in the world who can give us something now and also for the future. Josh, what do you make of this signing? Do you think that he will actually play game time? Will he have much game time from now until the end of the season, or is this a player for the future?
Look, I think it's a bit of both. I don't think you sign a player that's this highly rated. I mean, Santos were fighting tooth and nail to keep him. And for him, you know, Premier League, it's a huge step up in terms of quality. One of the things I do love watching is that the Brazilian league does give chances to sort of teenage players. And we're seeing that a lot in Brazil. And we've seen that a lot in terms of some of the players that have come out of Brazil in recent years. So you only have to look at players like Willian Esteval and, you know, Endrick, who's now at Lyon on loan from Real Madrid, to see that, you know, it doesn't always mean it's going to be an Alejo Veliz situation. Actually, he may well get game time. And I fully expect he will play a role in this squad. He was very highly sought after. Spurs moved pillar and post to try and get the deal done. And we moved very quickly for him. And of course, as you mentioned last night, there's a lot of paperwork involved in a deal like this, which is why we're seeing the announcement sort of delayed from him being at the game at the weekend. You're right, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's exciting. Only Thomas Frank will know whether he's ready or not. But Look, I think even looking at Janai Byfield getting an opportunity against Dortmund, especially with injuries, it'll be good to see what he can do on the pitch, and let's let his football do the talking. I'm sure if he's not going to play too much this season, he certainly will next season. And it's good to have some competition for Destiny Udogie. I think that now frees up Jed Spence to be that competition for Jed Spence at for Pedro Porro at right back. Unless Jed Spence is, of course, that left wing option that we've been looking for after his performance against Dortmund. But yeah, glad to see it through the door. And of course, without the domestic competitions, without the Carabao Cup, without the FA Cup, does limit the game time. And it'll be interesting to see. And I can't remember off the top of my head, Chris, you'll have to remind me of this, whether Souza is young enough to not count in terms of the homegrown quota and youth quotas and all of that for Champions League next stages. Is he able to be in that squad regardless of his nationality because of his age?
Well, this was another question that I was going to give you. Do you think that he will be included in this squad? Because a lot of fans today are expecting, particularly since the announcement, a lot of fans are expecting perhaps a loan move, because this is how Spurs seem to do things when we sign young players like this, especially as Thomas Frank alluded to there about players for the future. Do you think that he will be part of that Champions League squad? Do you think that he will be a part of the Premier League squad from now until the end of the season? Because the Brazilian league has finished. He has played the season. So do you think that he is going to be part of this squad straight away? Or do you think that he will be a part of the under-21s? How do you think the Spurs will manage this?
Look, for me, it's really simple. Ben Davies is out with a broken ankle. We don't have left-back cover. We cannot rely on three fullbacks to fill the void. All it takes is an injury or another injury. With our injury record at the moment, Udogie is consistently getting injured. Of course, Van der Ven can cover, and then you bring in Kevin Danso. But do we really want to leave ourselves light? And I think for me, you're bringing in a player who has played first-team football all season. We are light in terms of our squad. I would say keep him in the first-team squad. Allow him to adapt. He may take some time, and give him his opportunity. And in the summer, if it's, he's struggling to adapt, or it's not quite, he's not an immediate hit, then loan him out next season. I think that's the way we should be operating. I don't think we should be automatically loaning him out. I think that defeats the point of making the signing in the first place. We need left back cover right now for Destiny Udogie. And we need competition for Pedro Porro at right back as well. And if we're going to be improving our Premier League position, and we're going to be progressing in the Champions League, we're going to need every single player to be fit and available and ready to come in and make a difference if needed. So I think the sensible thing, if I'm Spurs, what I'd be doing is keeping him, and we can always loan him out in the summer. I don't think that's going to harm his development too much, because look at his age. He's very, very young. We can absolutely afford to keep him for 6 months and loan him next season if needs be.
Josh, what do you make overall of the window so far? Because as I've said, we're 22 days in. We've got 11 days left of this winter window. Gallagher and now Souza through the door. What do you make of the window so far? And what are your expectations in the next 11 days? Do you think there'll be another one or two coming through the door?
I would like to think there's going to be at least one, if not two players. We all know we need another defensive player. We know that Radu Dragushin is moving closer to a move to Italy, if reports in Italy are to be believed. So it looks like he's heading out the door. We absolutely need a forward player. We clearly don't have a resolution to Matisse Tell and Randall Kolo Muani at the moment. Reports that Randall Kolo Muani is exploring ending his loan early. Very, very loud noises from the Tell camp that he is not happy with the game time and he wants to get regular first team minutes elsewhere through probably a loan. Paris FC are obviously trying very hard for him. So for me, I definitely think we need at least two more players through the door. And I would expect Spurs to be very busy until the end of the transfer window. But in terms of where we're at so far, look, why are we waiting this late? I think Spurs could be acting a lot sooner. And I think we all wanted to see the business done straight away. But of course, we do know, and I hate to use this because it's an excuse that drives me up the wall, but the January transfer window is definitely tougher than the summer window. And there are opportunities that we will speak about on the podcast tonight that are, we were not talking about at the start of the window that may not have seemed possible. Jean-Philippe Mateta, for example, did not seem like that was a viable option. And now he wants out of Crystal Palace. And that could be a move that happens for, a number of teams. And the same thing, and we're going to talk about Marcos Senesi at Bournemouth, I'm sure. That's another deal that we would never have spoken about on day one of the window, and now could be a possibility. So, there does seem to be this trend. I think in January, things do happen quite late. I'm not overly worried. I think in terms of the team right now, what we need is to keep as all the players that are fit, and we need to go and win at Burnley. And then we need to be doing everything possible to bring 2 more players at least through the door so that we can beef up the squad, because right now we are absolutely threadbare.
Yeah. Another development player going out on loan today was confirmed by the football club earlier today. Yusuf Kamrich has joined League Two side Bristol Rovers on loan for the remainder of this season. A versatile left-sided player, 20 years old, usually found in attack in the midfield role. Also used as a left back. He went full-time with our academy in the 22-23 season and signed his first professional contract in 2024. A regular for our under-21s, he was shortlisted for the Premier League 2 Player of the Month award in November 2024. He was also on the bench for our men's first team fixtures against Copenhagen, Manchester United in November, and again this week in the Champions League fixture against Borussia Dortmund. So wishing him all of the very best. We've got a number of players out on loan, Josh, haven't we? It's about, them youngsters taking their opportunity, particularly those players that are going out on loan for the very first time.
Absolutely. Look, we're talking about a 20-year-old here who has clearly done enough to impress Thomas Frank that he was named on the bench for the Copenhagen and Man United games. So best wishes to him, absolutely. And Bristol Rovers is going to be a very interesting move to watch. Of course, I believe, if I'm right in thinking, Spurs played Bristol Rovers in the whatever the cup is called that used to be the Johnson Paint Trophy when they added the under-23s teams in.
Virtue Trophy now, yeah.
And so he is, he's going to have a great opportunity in League Two. So, I'm very, very keen to see these players getting first team minutes. And we know that if the loan's not going well, we're very good at recalling players. But for 6 months, hopefully he gets the game time. That's all you can hope for. All you can hope for is that they build up their confidence, they bulk up, and they get the game time. There's nothing worse than a young, talented player going out on a loan and then getting no minutes whatsoever. That's not helpful for the player. That's not helpful for us either. So hopefully at Bristol Rovers, he's going to get plenty of opportunities to impress. And, you only have to look at Iro at Mansfield Town.
Yeah.
Twice on his debut in his first game as a first team player to show that it can go very right very quickly. So best of luck to him. And let's hope that come the summer, he probably won't be ready for first team football straight from League Two, but we can then send him out again and he can up his level. I think that's all you really want from players that are not going to be quite ready for the Premier League just yet. You hope that if they go on their first loan, they can really impress to the point where they can then go up to the level, and hopefully we can be looking at Championship next season. And then there is a clear route to the first team from there on in. And I'm really impressed with some of the loan deals we have done at the moment. And there is no shortage of talent coming out of our academy as well. We'd be very, very excited about. That's one of the, I suppose, real positives of Spurs at the moment, is that we do have a lot of quality and our youth players are being snapped up very quickly by Football League clubs.
Josh, not only do we need to add real quality and impact players in this squad in this January transfer window, if the club can, but also the amount of injuries that Spurs have got right now. We thought that we had a lot of injuries under Ange in the last couple of years. Now, Thomas Frank, there is a lot of injuries right now. Spurs have suffered 20 separate injuries this season, missing a total of 625 days. Only Newcastle have lost more days to injuries this season. What a stat that is. Now, speaking ahead of the Burnley game, Thomas Frank in the press conference talking about Lucas Bergvall, who you mentioned right at the end of last night's show, is expected to be missing now for 2 to 3 months. Frank said, unfortunately, Lucas picked up an ankle injury. We keep being very unlucky with injuries, and it looks like it could be a longer one. He's being assessed for the next couple of days. So time frame, I'll know more about this in the next couple of days. This is a huge blow again to Thomas Frank, isn't it? Another injury to a key player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it was only one game and that's not enough to go by, but I absolutely loved that midfield that we played against Dortmund, and Bergvall was absolutely central to that. I thought he was linking up really well with Xavi Simons, and he was linking up really well with Dom Solanke too. And I thought he really ran the show. I thought it was one of those things, him and Xavi Simons really took control and put us on the front foot against Dortmund in that midfield. And it was I suppose it's a real shame, of course, to see him out for potentially quite a long time, because he's a player that I rate incredibly highly. Every time I watch him, he plays with so much heart, so much passion, and that balance that we had with Gray, Bergvall and Xavi Simons was something that I was really hoping to see us repeat against Burnley. And of course, when you're a player of that quality, you get kicked quite a lot and you end up in these situations. And every time I watch Bergvall, I do think, he's destined for bigger and better things. Spurs fans might not like me saying that, but, I do look at him and I think he reminds me in some ways, I'm not a direct comparison, but there are some traits that remind me a lot of when Modric first joined, in terms of that confidence that he plays with and that sort of almost arrogance when he's on the ball. I really love how hard he works. I really love what he contributes to this team. And so, obviously that's a massive, massive blow for us. But thankfully, we should have some other players available, and we desperately need to stay away from more injuries. It seems utterly bizarre why we keep having these injuries. I know there's been some sort of various bits of analysis on this, but as Spurs fans, we're all left wondering what is going on here. Why are we getting all of these injuries? Not all of them are in games. Some of them are, in training too. And you get some fans going all out on the medical staff, some on the managers for the style of play. And, I wanted to throw it back at you. And what do you really think is behind all these injuries? Is it just bad luck?
I think it's a bit of everything, actually, Josh. The medical staff, they have kept replacing them. They keep advertising the job vacancies again, and they keep getting people in post. And I just think it's a mixture of problems. I really do, and I think it's another thing that Vinay actually mentioned this in his statement, or this message to the fans again, and I think that it is another problem that really, really does need to be addressed at the football club. Because you think this time last year, or even going back a little bit further, Ange Postecoglou got the blame for all of these injuries constantly. Everyone said about it's the way that the players were training. It was the way that Ange was making these players train in an intense way. I think that there has been a lot of positives this season. You take Richarlison for one, the amount of games that he did play before he did get the injury, but, we can't continue like this. This has been, going on for a long, long time. So this is something definitely that the club need to address, and pretty quickly. Let's come on to the next one, because Team Talk have stated here that Tottenham have been seeking a new stopper to bring in competition for number one spot, to add back up to Vicario, but also challenge him for the shirt. However, they have been discreetly looking at top options that could become available if Vicario leaves. And there are more reports stating that Inter Milan are interested. Other reports in Italy are stating that he wants this move in the summer. Josh, how good do you think that Kinski is? How good do you think he can be? Because when he arrived, this was exactly what we expected, and this is exactly what was reported, that he weren't only going to be the number 2, he was going to be challenging Vicario for the number 1 spot. Is he that good yet, or do Spurs need to look at somebody else if Vicario does want out?
Well, I think it's Michael K8405 has just commented Henderson at Palace, and I am fully on board with that. He is a goalkeeper that I really, really highly rate. Look, I think we'll all admit, I don't think it's controversial to say that Vicario has been a weak link in this team. There are times when he's had some absolutely stellar performances. Monaco away is a great example of that. But there have been so many times where he's desperately let us down.
Yeah.
Fulham being a great example. And what we know about Vicario is, of course, he's a good shot stopper. But with the ball at his feet, which is how these modern teams like to play, he is just not very good. And I think when Inter Milan, these rumours, these have been going on for months and months and months. There's got to be some sort of credence in them. Yeah. I fully expect Vicario to leave the club in the summer, which is a shame because his parents are lovely. And I want to love Vicario because I think, his passion is infectious. But, how often do we see Vicario make a mistake and he sort of flails his arms about at other players, always sort of passing the blame, and actually he's contributed to that. And I think we definitely need some stability. It's kind of more of the same of Hugo Lloris in his latter years at Spurs, unfortunately, where when Lloris joined the club, he was magnificent, but by the end, he was making some really big mistakes. And look at the difference between those top teams and the teams that aren't at the top, and the goalkeeper is often one of them. Look at David Raya at Arsenal. He occasionally makes a mistake, but how often does he make these incredible saves and consistently wins the ball from these set pieces? Emi Martinez, there was speculation about his future. He's come back into the team. Villa are flying. Donnarumma's arguably the best goalkeeper in the world, and he's at City. And I know City have lost their last 2 games, but he's had a really good season as well. And Alisson, we all know his quality. And with Vicario, is he really a top 10 goalkeeper in the Premier League? I think Pickford's above him. I think Henderson's above him. I think there's an argument to say that Robert Sanchez, although he was heavily criticised, has been above him. He's had a very good season at Chelsea. And Robin Roof's Sunderland's having a good season. I'm sure, Nick Pope, you would probably consider above Vicario. Bernd Leno at Fulham is another one that you could name that is arguably more consistent. So, to be a top team competing for European football every season in the highest honours in football, you need a top-class goalkeeper. And I like Vicario for sure, but I'm not convinced that he is of the level required, unfortunately. You need a goalkeeper who can do everything. And unfortunately, Vicario is a great throwback goalkeeper, but he just doesn't seem to suit the modern game in the Premier League. So that weakness, that frailty that still exists from set pieces, as was undone, made very clear against West Ham. Those moments like Fulham, we're seeing too much of that, unfortunately. So in terms of what we do now, I think this, we spoke about Hermansen and Kinski. I think it's very bizarre, that rumour. Yeah. I would go for a more experienced goalkeeper if we can get one. I mentioned to Stegen yesterday, and then to find out that he's actually gone to Girona. I think we should be looking at experienced goalkeepers right now. Someone's just said, Vicario can go, reminds me of Gomez. Yeah, absolutely. Aurelio Gomez, absolutely. It's that kind of level, that 10-11 season where he was having all sorts of howlers. So for me, again, I'm looking at the scouting department here, and we need to profile a goalkeeper who is very clearly good with his feet. Now, Kinski was meant to be that, but Kinski almost seems the opposite, where he's very good with his feet, but not as good as a shot stopper. We need someone who can do a bit of both. And so maybe an experienced goalkeeper might just do the trick. I think that is a position that we will look at, but I'm not sure that's the priority right now. Of course, Vicario, I think, could be replaced. He's definitely replaceable. But I would say right now, let's get a left-sided forward, and let's get maybe a striker or a centre-back in as well before we start looking at the goalkeepers. I think goalkeeper's summer's problem.
Josh, just very quickly, I know you've mentioned this before, but for those who didn't hear that show that you mentioned it on, you spoke to Vicario's mum and dad last season. Talk us through what happened and what they said to you.
Yeah, now that was a really interesting conversation. This was after Fulham away last season. We'd lost the game 2-0. Mateta came into the crowd to speak to Spurs fans, listen to Spurs fans. And after the game, Ange Postecoglou, he sort of scuttled out quite quickly. Players were coming and going. Ended up speaking to Alex Iwobi and Calvin Bassey. I asked Calvin Bassey if he'd like to join Spurs. And he said, if they pay me enough money, which made me laugh. I am a big fan of Calvin Bassey. I do rate him. So you had players coming out left, right and centre going on international duty. And Vicario's parents were there waiting for Guglielmo Vicario to come out. And, you know, I spoke to them and they're lovely. I mean, Vicario's mum, we saw your video, of course, with her at the Super Cup, which was hilarious. I don't know if she was pissed or what, but she sounded like she was having a great time. And, you know, Vicario's mum does most of the talking, I think it's fair to say. I know, Chris, you've met them. Vicario's dad does less of the talking. I think that's definitely fair to say. But, you know, they were very, very forthright with what they were talking about. Vicario was very unhappy with how things were. I don't think he minces his words. I do love Vicario in interviews because he is very, very passionate and very, very forthright. But they were talking about how unhappy the players were with everything that was going on and having to try and stick together, and that the players were just really, really focusing on trying to get this right, but really feeling the pain and the pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflected in Vicario's attitude, because he often fronts interviews when things go badly. And you can tell how annoyed he is. And so, in a way, if Vicario was better with his feet, I don't think we'd have many complaints. And it's unfortunate that way, because I do love Vicario. It's just a shame that, you know, the demands of how Premier League teams play, you've got to be good with your feet. And one thing I will say, to his credit, actually, and it sounds like I've been just slamming Vicario the entire time, I am pleased to see since that Fulham game, he has been much better at kicking the ball long. And sometimes you need that to give yourself a breather. I mean, he had another really shaky moment against Dortmund, and I was delighted to see him kick the ball out of touch, out of play, rather than do a Fulham again, because I think all of our hearts were in our mouths at that time.
Yeah.
But it's a shame. And look, someone said here, Kinski was bloody brilliant on his debut, and Kinski just needs to be thrown in. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not opposed to Kinski getting game time. And I think the fact that he's getting very few minutes isn't going to help his development whatsoever. But then you're hearing these sort of reports and rumours coming out that he's not impressed in training. You know, when Kinski played against Liverpool in that Carabao Cup semi-final 1-0 win, he was magnificent. I mean, he was doing things on the ball that was, it was like he was an outfield player. It's like a Brazilian beach footballer. Let's just hope that, you know, we get this right, because he is so young still, Kinski, and he is so highly rated in the Czech Republic. I would just love to see a situation where we, you know, are able to rotate our goalkeepers a little bit more. I think we've been not very good at that, and it doesn't help that we're out the domestic competition. So I think for the remaining 6 months, it does make sense for Kinski to get a loan. And hopefully, if he can have a really good loan, then we're absolutely going to be talking about him getting first team minutes next season, because Vicario has certainly not made that shirt his own. I think that it's clear to say that Vicario, you know, has a lot of work to do if he wants to absolutely guarantee that shirt. And maybe, who knows where his mindset's at? Maybe he's already got one foot out the door and going back to Italy. We don't know. So I think, yeah, loan for Kinski for sure. Give him some minutes. Let's hope he really impresses. And then we can have a conversation in the summer about the goalkeeper position.
Josh, another one we moved to, and this is a player that you mentioned in the last couple of days, caught offside, have again reported about Mateta. Tottenham fouled with a move for Mateta in the summer, and it has now been reported over the recent weeks that Spurs may try again for the Crystal Palace striker in this January transfer window. It's also been reported by Caught Offside that Juventus are now pushing to land Mateta before this window closes. Where do you think he will end up? Do you think he will definitely leave Crystal Palace in this window?
I absolutely do think he will leave, because I don't think it's going to help Crystal Palace having players that want to leave playing there, especially with a manager who we know is going as well. And with the Mark Gay departure, the Glasner news, I think it's kind of the wheels have absolutely fallen off for Crystal Palace. Now, there are reports that Aston Villa have struck an agreement with Mateta in terms of personal terms, but there are also reports that have come out today saying that Chelsea are looking at hijacking that deal. I think there's going to be a lot of clubs interested in Jean-Philippe Mateta, and I got a few comments yesterday on the pod and on Twitter when I tweeted about it, talking about people not being convinced with Mateta, people thinking he's average. Would Chelsea go for him if he was average? Would Villa, where they are in the league, go for him if he was average? Would Juventus be going for him if he was average? I think we need to look at the competition and the market and who's going for him. And I think that says a lot about what the player possesses. So I would love to see Spurs in that competition. But I think absolutely, in an ideal scenario, really what can happen is that Juventus take Randall Kolo Muani back on loan after scoring 8 in 16 for them. Clearly they rated him and he did well there and he was happy. And then that frees up the ability for us to move for a player like Mateta. I think that Premier League experience is absolutely crucial. And I'm sure what that tells us is it's absolutely a player who can hit the ground running. And Mateta absolutely is going to be in the conversation for the France squad, although he probably isn't going to start. I'm sure he will absolutely be in the conversation for that squad as he has been called up consistently for them. So we can't complain at that. I think it's good to see us in the mix, hopefully. Let's see if we do get involved in that. And look, people are going to continue to say Mateta is average, but is he better than what we've got? I would say yes. And I think there's a comparable with Dom Solanke for sure. But I think Mateta would be our best striker if he comes in. And can we really ask for much more than improving our starting 11? I think that's all we really want to see is if we can improve a player in our starting 11, we absolutely should do it.
Josh, Thomas Frank said in his press conference today that he had lunch with board members again. He said, I had lunch with Nick and Johan again today. So again, it's a good sign of the support is there. We just need to keep going. And he was then asked another question about the lunch. He said we had a chicken sandwich. I'm not sure how relevant that is. But the support is clearly there from the board with Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I mean, look,
some of these press conference questions, eh?
Yeah, no, absolutely, it's quite funny. But do you know what? It's good to see. In a way, Thomas Frank has been exceptionally boring in press conferences, and I must admit, I have been entertained by Thomas Frank a little bit more than before. From his 2 glasses of red wine, that's a must, to his chicken sandwich quotes. I don't know whether they're funny or whether they're weird or whether they're both. But look, I think the club is making a very concerted effort to try and build that positive feeling back. And it all rides on this Burnley game. Win the Burnley game, and I think everyone will be feeling a little bit more positive. We've got a really, really big week ahead. If we can win the Burnley game and win the Frankfurt game both convincingly, I think that will change a lot of people's opinions with where we're at right now. And we are quite an all-or-nothing football club. We're quite an all-or-nothing fan base. Now, I'm still not convinced by Thomas Frank. My opinion's not changed. I want to see consistent good performances and consistent results. But, you can't blame the club for trying to change the feeling. They've got to try everything they can to try and turn things around. Ultimately, let's let the football do the talking and not the chicken sandwich. No matter how many lunches Thomas Frank has with Johan Lange and Vinay Venkatesham, it makes no difference as the results aren't there. So let's go and win against Burnley. Let's go and seal that top 8 by winning against a very, very poor Frankfurt side. And let's build some momentum. And as I said, I couldn't care less who the manager is as long as we're playing well and winning football matches. So, look, I just think I'm glad to see Thomas Frank keeping in as high spirits as possible under an enormous amount of pressure. But he's certainly not out of the woods yet, as I said yesterday.
What do you think we're going to end up with? Thomas Frank talking about more lunches with the board members or signings during the January window?
Who knows?
Because it's 2-2 at the moment.
You wouldn't have put that on the bingo card, would you, at the start of the window? Or maybe
No.
you would have, because you expect Spurs to be poor in the transfer market, I suppose.
Josh, look, this is not the sort of question that I would have thought that I'd be putting to a sports journalist.
Yeah, but this is how bizarre Spurs has become. Things very, very weird at our football club, and it's strange that this is what press conferences are talking about. But I think enough about chicken sandwiches. I know there was another important question posed to Thomas Frank in the window about Mickey van der Ven, and I'm sure
that's what we're going to come on to.
That's coming up.
Yeah, that's the one I'm going to come up to. Before we do that, any more stories that you want to talk about?
Well, the other report today is about Marcus Senesi at Bournemouth. Apparently, he wants out, and Ben Jacobs is reporting that Spurs are very much interested. Now, Chelsea are also in for him, and Chelsea are desperately looking for a centre-back. There are rumours that a deal could be happening there, but that's this evening that this has been reported by Ben Jacobs at TalkSport, saying that Spurs are looking at, Marcus Senesi. This is a player, Argentine international, and someone that I think definitely does improve Spurs. We're looking at a deal that could be worth around 35 million euros, so just under 30 million pounds, which for me is a very, very affordable deal. And Senesi's, impressed me when I've seen him play for Bournemouth. I have absolutely liked what I've seen, and clearly, let's just see what happens there. I mean, look, there's reports. I think it's unconfirmed reports right now. There's reports here, there, and everywhere. You never know really what's going on at the moment. Chelsea, we know, are interested. There are several reports that Spurs are looking at him. I think it's clear we need a centre back, but I don't expect Spurs to do any business until the time when Radu goes, and I do expect Radu to leave the club.
Josh, I think we're having more comments about sandwiches right now than potential signings.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. I'll be honest. This is the time where everything gets a little bit crazy and everything gets a little bit weird, and all sorts of rubbish reports come out, all sorts of rumours, all sorts of fake ITK accounts claiming that journalists have said things that they haven't said. Accounts of sort of spam accounts and parody accounts coming out with stuff as well. So I really, really don't know where we're at the moment, and it'd just be worth keeping tabs and seeing. Clearly we want a centre back, but I don't think anything's going to become clear until right at the end of the window. What we do know is that Chelsea are interested, and that's good competition to be in.
Right, Josh, the last story we're going to cover, and it is about Mickey van der Ven, and it's funny because the previous show that we did, you said we ought to slap a £100 million price tag on Mickey van der Ven. Of course, that's what's come out today. A lot of media reports out today stating that Spurs, if they did sell Mickey van der Ven, it would be £100 million. Well, Mickey van der Ven has been brought up in the press conference today. Thomas Frank said, "I've just seen Mickey." He was asked the question, "Is Mickey happy at the club?" "I've just seen him. He seems very happy and smiling. He was very happy after the game." And I can vouch for that, because when I was by the tunnel, Mickey van der Ven was actually very happy after that Dortmund game, and hugging his fellow teammates. Of course, he didn't play in the match. But Thomas Frank then went on to say, "I think Mickey is an excellent player. I think he's got he's a fantastic ambassador for the club. I think he has potentially his best season so far. He's fit, he's strong, he's good defensively, he's growing as a leader, he's scoring goals as well. He's a very important player for us this season and for the future." He was then asked the question, "Is he off limits and not for sale at any price?" And Thomas Frank said, "I would say he's a very important player for us. Mickey is a top-notch player now and for the future." There's no way that Spurs fans anywhere will want Mickey van der Ven going anywhere. There's no way that Thomas Frank will want Mickey van der Ven going anywhere.
Well, it wasn't a categoric no, is the takeaway from that answer. And I think what that proves is that every footballer has a price.
Yeah.
And if ENIC is anything to go by, if we're going to judge them on their history, we know that for the right price, any player can be sold. Harry Kane was the player to build your squad around. Harry Kane was the player to offer whatever he wanted to be paid. Harry Kane was the player that we needed to really, really show ambition for. Now that Kane's gone, that proves everything. Van der Ven, of course, he's going to be wanted by the top clubs in the world. He's a brilliant, brilliant footballer. And the reason why I said it's got to be at least 100 million to be a world record fee for a centre-back is because that is how valuable he is. But for the right price, I'm sure Spurs will entertain offers. And that's not where we want to be. Spurs have got to show that ambition in the market now and in the summer to keep these players. Van der Ven, at his age, he's 24. This is exactly the kind of player you build your squad around, and you have him as your centre-back for the next 6-7 years.
Yeah.
We've got to stop losing top players. We've got to stop. And the only way that's going to happen is if we spend the money and we bring the players in. And in terms of Van der Ven's body language, of course, rumours are going to happen at a time when a team's not performing particularly well. Of course, that's the case. This happens every transfer window. But the most important thing is that the team wins football matches. And of course, he was going to be happy after the Dortmund game because he's a passionate guy. You only need to watch his interview on the overlap with Gary Neville to show that passion coming through. And so for me, here's a guy that seriously cares, seriously wants to win football matches. He's had a taste of silverware with the Europa League. He wants more. Any player that's ambitious will want more. And any player that's ambitious will care massively about the level of our performances this season and will be very, very visibly upset by that and angered by that. And that's what I think we saw after the Bournemouth game. I think that was human emotion, and I like to see it from our players. It shows how much they care. And it's as simple as that. You build your team around him. You've got to invest, and you've got to put your money where your mouth is. Simple as.
Josh, lastly, what I said to you yesterday about that win against Borussia Dortmund, have you changed your mind a little bit? Or, even if it's 1% about Thomas Frank, can it work under Thomas Frank? Can we play more attacking football? I actually think that some people have been won over by that game, and they are more open to, Thomas Frank going forward and, time and patience. Do you get that vibe as well?
Unfortunately, mate, as a Tottenham Hotspur fan, I am forever a pessimist, and I will believe it when I see it. If we win against Burnley and we win against Frankfurt, then my mind will probably change. And I think a lot of minds will change. A lot of heads will turn. But right now, it's one game. We always perform well in the Champions League. We've not, we've not conceded a goal at home in the Champions League. We won all our games at home in the Champions League. Well, that's all well and good, but we're not doing it in the Premier League.
Yeah.
When you can go to Burnley and win, when you can face the likes of Arsenal, City, United, Newcastle and get results against them, then I'll believe. It's as simple as that. For too long, the results have not been good enough. The performances have not been good enough. I want to see the handbrake taken off in the Premier League. If we can replicate how we played against Dortmund that first half, against Burnley, we'll have no problems at all. But we're not getting that. So we need to set up to win the game, not set up to not lose to the opposition. And then we can have that conversation. It's far too early. It's a single game. I want it to work for Thomas Frank at Spurs, but right now I'm not convinced, and that's on him and the players to convince me.
Can I ask you for a score prediction?
You just don't know with Spurs. You just don't know. I'd like to think we're not going to lose the game.
Yeah.
Burnley have drawn their last two against United and Liverpool.
Okay. I'll ask you this same question next week when you're on, Josh. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow with another daily transfer news show. And let's hope that Spurs can get a few more deals done in the next 11 days. Josh, thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And until the next one, come on, you Spurs.
Bye.